What if the one thing that proved your sister was still alive showed up 20 years after she vanished? That's what happened to Emily Palmer, a woman who had buried the past, only to find it sitting quietly in her mailbox one cold November morning. A tiny bracelet, hand-woven, purple and white. The same one her 8-year-old sister had made at summer camp, the day before she disappeared. And it didn't come with a note, just a return address, 500 miles away. This is the story of a child who vanished, and the sister who refused to stop looking. August 2nd, 2003. Camp Willow Creek. Nestled deep in the Smoky Mountains of North Carolina, it was the kind of place where kids roasted marshmallows, learned archery, and hiked under the stars. For 8-year-old Lily Palmer, it was her first summer away from home. For her 13-year-old sister Emily, it was her last year as a junior counselor. That night, the girls sat by the campfire, making friendship bracelets while fireflies blinked above their heads. "You have to wear it forever," Lily whispered, slipping a purple and white bracelet onto Emily's wrist. "Promise?" Emily smiled. "And you have to wear yours too." But by sunrise, Lily was gone. Counselors discovered Lily's bed empty at 6:14 a.m. Her sleeping bag was cold. Her shoes were gone. At first, they thought she'd wandered off, maybe to the lake or the craft cabin. But after 30 minutes, panic began to set in. The police were called. Search dogs. Helicopters. Hundreds of volunteers combed the woods. But there were no signs of struggle. No screams heard. No clues left behind. It was as if the mountains swallowed her whole. Emily, then only 13, watched as her parents shattered in slow motion. Her mother blamed the camp. Her father blamed the woods. And Emily? She blamed herself. Camp staff were interrogated. Fellow campers questioned. One girl said she heard a man's voice outside their cabin that night. Another remembered Lily whispering something about a secret path behind the art shed. The camp director, Mr. Chambers, insisted everything was safe. "We've run this place for 47 years. Nothing like this has ever happened." But something felt off. A counselor named Trevor Marsh, 22 at the time, suddenly resigned 2 days after Lily vanished. He claimed it was too traumatic to stay. Police investigated him, but found no criminal record, no history of misconduct. He disappeared from the headlines just as quickly as Lily did. Emily grew up fast. Her parents divorced 2 years later. Her mom moved to Colorado. Her dad turned to alcohol and silence. Emily carried the guilt through high school, through college, through every birthday and Christmas that passed without her sister. "I thought about her every day. Not just who she was, but who she would have been." She became a social worker, working with missing and exploited children. It was her way of making sense of the ache that never left. But she stopped talking about Lily, because talking about her meant accepting she might never come back. Emily now lived alone in a small duplex in Roanoke, Virginia. It was a quiet life. Books, tea, long walks. The pain had settled, not gone, but dulled with time. Until one cold Monday morning, she opened her mailbox and found a small padded envelope. No name, just her address. Inside, a bracelet, purple and white, faded, worn, but unmistakable. It was Lily's. Emily dropped to her knees on the sidewalk, trembling. She rushed to the police. Detective Miles Renner, a calm, seasoned officer, met with her the next day. "We'll test it for prints, DNA if we can. But the return address is a P.O. box, registered to a private security firm in Charlotte." "Security firm?" Emily asked, confused. "Yes. And here's where it gets strange. Whoever owns the box also has a connection to the original Camp Willow Creek investigation." Emily's pulse quickened. "Who?" "Trevor Marsh." Emily hadn't heard that name in years. She pulled up everything she could find. Trevor Marsh was now working under a new alias, Thomas Rayner. He ran a low-profile security firm that specialized in rural surveillance technology. No public social media. No office visits. Just a single address tied to a P.O. box and a remote compound 2 hours outside of Charlotte. Why would he send the bracelet? Why now? What if Lily is alive? What if someone's been keeping her this whole time? Or worse, what if he's taunting me? That night, Emily sat at her kitchen table, bracelet in her hand, staring at old newspaper clippings. One photo, almost forgotten, showed Lily and Trevor at a picnic table. Trevor was braiding string, teaching the girls how to make bracelets. He was the one who gave them the purple and white thread. Emily's phone buzzed. A new voicemail. Unknown number. No transcript. She pressed play. You don't know me, but I know who you are. Your sister. She's not where you think she is. Don't trust the police. If you want answers, come to 317 Alder Lane. Alone. Click. No name. No voice recognition. Just a cold, calm tone, and directions to a remote address. Deep in the Appalachian foothills. Emily stared at the bracelet on the table. Her hands trembled. She opened the bottom drawer of her nightstand and pulled out a flashlight, a notepad, and the only photo she had of Lily wearing the bracelet. She tucked the bracelet into her jacket pocket. If you're out there, Lily, I'm coming. She locked the door behind her and drove off into the night. Emily's tires crunched the gravel as her headlights illuminated a rusted sign. Alder Lane, private road. No trespassing. The GPS signal cut out. She hadn't told anyone where she was going. Not Detective Renner. Not her co-workers. No one. It was reckless. But for the first time in 20 years, she had something more powerful than fear, a lead. At the end of the road stood a weather-worn cabin. The porch light flickered. The door was ajar. Emily parked 100 feet away and approached on foot, flashlight in one hand, pepper spray in the other. Please don't be a trap, she whispered. She stepped inside. The floorboards groaned. A single lantern flickered on a wooden table, next to a thick manila folder labeled Palmer Case, 2003. And then, a voice from the shadows. I didn't think you'd actually come. Out of the corner emerged a man in his 40s. Scruffy, pale, nervous. Who are you? Emily demanded. Name's Caleb. I used to work security detail at Willow Creek back then. Not officially. I was hired off the books to do perimeter checks. I know what happened to your sister. Emily's hand tightened around her flashlight. Where is she? Caleb shook his head. If I knew for sure, I'd tell you. But I know who took her. And I know why they covered it up. Emily opened the manila folder. Inside were copies of incident reports never filed with police. Photos of bruises. Complaints written by parents. Several names repeated, including Trevor Marsh. But the most chilling was a report dated August 1, 2003, the night before Lily vanished. Unauthorized vehicle spotted behind the arts shed around midnight. Unmarked white van. No plate. Reported to Director Chambers. No action taken. Emily looked up. A van. Caleb nodded. Someone was hunting that night. And the camp knew. Caleb revealed that Trevor Marsh wasn't just a counselor. He was connected to a private child behavior program that recruited children from troubled or fractured homes. They looked for kids with no voice. Kids people would assume just ran away. Lily's file was marked. Emily's voice cracked. She wasn't troubled. She was a little girl who liked horses and glow-in-the-dark stars. I know, Caleb replied. But someone at that camp put her on a list. She wasn't the only one. Caleb led her to a back room where photos covered the walls, newspaper clippings, missing posters, camp rosters. At the center was Lily, smiling, innocent. Surrounding her were 5 other children who had vanished between 2000 and 2005, each from different camps across North Carolina, Tennessee, and Georgia. Same pattern, same age range, same no evidence stories. Why hasn't this blown up? Emily asked, horrified. Because the people funding those camps have money. They've buried this for decades. But your sister's bracelet, that means someone wants the truth out. Emily finally asked the question burning in her chest. Did you send the bracelet? Caleb shook his head slowly. No. I haven't touched that camp since 2004. But whoever did, they want you to keep digging. Maybe there's someone on the inside. Or maybe... He paused. Maybe it was her. Her, Lily. If she's alive, and somehow free, this could have been her way of letting you know she remembers. Back in her car, Emily gripped the steering wheel and sobbed. The thought that Lily might be alive, and fighting to be found, shook her to her core. I failed you. I was supposed to protect you. I'm so sorry, Lily. Her tears turned to resolve. She wiped her face and dialed Detective Renner. I need you to meet me tomorrow. I found someone who knows the truth, and you won't believe what else he has. But as she spoke, a loud bang echoed from the cabin. Emily dropped her phone. She ran back toward the house. Smoke poured from the windows. Inside, Caleb's files burned on the floor, his wall of evidence in flames. A single word was spray-painted across the front porch in black. Stop. Caleb was gone. No sign of struggle. No blood. Just a gun. Emily staggered back, clutching the bracelet around her wrist. They're watching. They know I found him. And then, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Next time, come alone. No cops. Click. Emily barely slept. The smell of smoke still lingered on her coat. Her hands were blistered from dragging the scorched folder out of the fire. Most of the documents were lost. But one page survived. It was a list. 9 names. All children. All between 7 and 10 years old. Each one with a camp ID number. At the top of the list, Palmer, Lily, age 8. Camp ID, hashtag 023, WC. At the bottom, Jacobs, Aaron, age 9. Camp ID, hashtag 015, WC. Missing, 2001 inch. Emily's fingers trembled as she highlighted the names that matched known disappearances. 5 of them. What happened to the others? Despite the warning to stay away from the police, Emily couldn't stay silent. She met with Detective Miles Renner the next morning at a quiet diner outside Roanoke. She slid the half-burned list across the table. These are the kids. They were targeted, chosen. Someone at that camp flagged them. Renner read the list and sat back. You know what this means? If what you're saying is true, this isn't just a kidnapping. It's organized child trafficking. And it went on for years, Emily added. I need access to the archived files. Names. Employee lists. Everyone who worked at Camp Willow Creek between 2000 and 2005. Renner hesitated. If I do this, there's no going back, Emily. These aren't small-time criminals. You start pulling threads, and the wrong people start noticing. Emily stared at him, eyes filled with fire. They already noticed. Renner arranged a meeting with Richard Chambers, now 72 years old, the former director of Camp Willow Creek. He lived alone in a gated retirement community just outside Asheville, North Carolina. When Emily arrived, Chambers looked frail but alert, like a man who never stopped watching the rearview mirror. You shouldn't have come here, he said, before she even spoke. Then tell me what happened to my sister, Emily replied, voice low and trembling. Chambers closed the door behind them. You were just a kid. You weren't supposed to find out. Chambers poured a glass of water with shaking hands. Trevor wasn't acting alone. There was funding, grants disguised as therapy programs for at-risk children. But it wasn't therapy. It was abduction, plain and simple. Emily's hands clenched under the table. And you let it happen. I tried to stop it, but they threatened my family. And then Lily disappeared. That was the last straw. I resigned 2 months later and moved as far away from those mountains as I could. So you did nothing, Emily snapped, standing. I kept records, Chambers said quickly. Not enough to stop them, but enough to expose them. He handed her an envelope. Inside, a flash drive. Labeled, Willow Files, classified. Emily plugged the flash drive into her laptop. Hundreds of files. Most password protected. But one folder was open. Intake forms, 2000 to 2003. She opened Lily's. At the bottom of the form, under behavioral notes, someone had scribbled, attached, lonely, curious, good candidate. She opened a few more. The same notes appeared again and again. No strong family structure. Introverted. Wanders at night. These weren't notes for counselors. They were profiles for targeting. Emily called Carmen, the ex-staff member who once worked under the same program. Carmen agreed to meet her at a rest stop halfway between Roanoke and Asheville. There, Emily showed her the files. Carmen confirmed the truth. They used a screening form, coded language. We were told we were helping kids. Therapy through nature. But the ones flagged as candidates, they didn't come back the next year. Some never came home. Emily felt sick. How many? Carmen looked away. Dozens. Maybe more. As Emily left the rest stop, her phone rang again. Unknown number. Same cold voice. You were warned. Walk away. Emily didn't hesitate. Where is my sister? There was silence. Then, you're getting too close. Next time, it won't be a warning. Click. Emily returned home to find her laptop open, the screen black. The flash drive was still plugged in, but the files were gone. All of them. She gasped, heart racing. Someone had remote accessed her system. Only one file remained. An audio clip. She pressed play. It was a child's voice. Soft. Fragile. My name is Lily. I miss my sister. I want to go home now. Emily dropped the laptop. Oh my God, she's alive. The audio ended. Then a distorted voice came through. Your move, Emily. She rushed to her closet, pulled out a box labeled Lily. Inside were photos, drawings, and the original bracelet. She placed the audio device next to it. She finally had proof. But now, she had a choice. Go to the media, or go directly to the people hiding her sister. Emily stared at the audio file on her desk, the sound of Lily's trembling voice still echoing in her ears. My name is Lily. I miss my sister. I want to go home now. 20 years of silence shattered in just 7 seconds. But this wasn't over. It was just beginning. Emily sat alone in her kitchen, 3 names scribbled across a notepad. Carmen, the whistleblower. Chambers, the camp director with buried secrets. Unknown, the voice who kept calling. Each one held a piece of the puzzle. But the only lead Emily had now was the final message. Your move, Emily. She didn't want to play their game, but they had her sister. And now they had her full attention. Carmen arranged for Emily to meet someone. Someone who had been through it. Aaron Jacobs, age 29 now, was one of the names on the original candidate list. Presumed missing in 2001, but he'd been found in 2015, wandering in northern Georgia. Malnourished. Amnesiac. He had no memory of where he'd been for 14 years. Until last year. Emily met him at a trauma recovery center in Tennessee. His voice was soft, measured, but his eyes heavy. They had rooms with no clocks, no windows. They played videos on loops, told us our names were fake, that our families didn't want us. Emily's heart broke. Do you remember a girl named Lily? Aaron hesitated, then nodded. She wore a purple bracelet. She was kind. She gave me her cookie once. Said it was her birthday. Emily gasped. August 1st. That was her birthday. She said she had a sister. I think I think she tried to escape once. 2 days later, Emily received another padded envelope in her mailbox. No return address. Inside, an old Polaroid photo. 2 children, a boy and a girl, sitting on the floor of what looked like a storage room. Gray walls. A single light overhead. Emily's hand flew to her mouth. The girl was Lily. Eyes hollow, hair longer, but unmistakably her. On the back of the photo, "You're getting closer. She's not far." Emily returned to Richard Chambers, the former camp director, demanding answers. She slammed the Polaroid onto his table. "You told me you didn't know where she was." He stared at the photo, face pale. "I didn't. But I know where that room is." Emily leaned in. "Where?" "There's a second property, near the original camp. We called it the Retreat. It was off books. No records. That's where they took the flagged kids for evaluation. I was only there once." "Is it still standing?" Chambers nodded. "If they haven't moved her, that's where she'd be." Emily knew she couldn't go to the police. The group behind Lily's abduction had money, power, and reach. Going public without proof would risk everything. So she went back to Carmen. Together, they gathered surveillance gear, printed maps, and photos of the property, now owned by a shell company with no listed employees. Under the cover of darkness, they drove into the woods near the old Camp Willow Creek site. Rain tapped gently on the windshield. They parked a mile from the structure and hiked through thick trees. Finally, there it was. A 2-story concrete building. No signs. No lights. No movement. But cameras, still mounted, still blinking red. Using a side entry Caleb had marked in his now-lost files, they pried open a rusted maintenance door. The inside was musty. Silent. Abandoned, but too clean to be forgotten. Emily and Carmen moved carefully. The hallways were lined with locked rooms, each marked with a number, not a name. They reached the basement level. And then, they found room 7. The door was sealed with a padlock. Carmen picked it open. They stepped inside. It was the room from the Polaroid. Same layout. Same peeling paint. Same flickering bulb. Emily froze. On the floor lay a faded stuffed rabbit. She picked it up. On its ear, embroidered letters. LP. Lily Palmer. This was her room. Emily fell to her knees, clutching the toy. She was here. She was right here. And on the wall, in faint crayon, a sentence. "Emily, I miss you." Suddenly, a loud bang echoed from the floor above. Footsteps. Heavy. Slow. Emily and Carmen looked at each other in panic. "Someone's here," Carmen whispered. They turned off their flashlights. Another door creaked. Then a voice. Distorted. "Come, mail." "You should have walked away, Emily." Emily grabbed the rabbit. Carmen grabbed the map. They ran. Emily clutched the stuffed rabbit to her chest, adrenaline pounding in her ears. She and Carmen sprinted down the concrete hallway of the abandoned facility, footsteps echoing behind them. "You should have walked away, Emily." The voice repeated. "Come." Confident. Closer. They reached the back stairwell. Carmen slammed the door shut behind them, jamming a broken mop handle through the latch. For a moment, silence. Emily turned to Carmen, eyes wild. "Did you see his face?" "No." "But he knew your name." They fled into the pitch-black woods. Rain soaked their jackets. Branches clawed at their faces. But Emily didn't care. She had the rabbit. She had proof. She had hope. But something else burned in her mind. The voice in the building had sounded familiar. Not from childhood. Not from the camp. Recently. Suddenly, it clicked. The calls. Back at her apartment, Emily dried off and reviewed every voicemail she'd received. She isolated the distortion, ran it through a basic vocal restoration filter on her laptop. The voice morphed. Smooth. Baritone. "Come." and then as clear as glass. Detective Miles Renner. Her breath stopped. The man she'd trusted. The man who had helped her get the files. He hadn't just been watching the investigation. He had been controlling it. Emily didn't go to his precinct. She waited and followed him. She watched him drive to a suburban house outside Charlottesville, one registered under a fake LLC. She waited for him to leave, then knocked. A woman answered, pale, nervous, holding a little girl's hand. Emily's eyes widened. The child looked just like Lily. Is your name Lily?" she asked softly. The little girl shook her head. "Her name's June," the woman answered quickly. "My husband wouldn't like us talking to strangers." Emily's heart shattered. Renner had a family, and possibly another stolen child. Emily took everything: the bracelet, the crayon message, the rabbit, the audio clip, and the photos, and contacted Nora Grant, a national investigative reporter known for blowing open government cover-ups. Together, they crafted a story backed by every piece of evidence Emily had gathered over 2 decades. 48 hours later, the segment aired. Exclusive: whistleblower sister uncovers national child abduction ring tied to camps, private security firms, and law enforcement. It went viral. Federal agents reopened the case. Anonymous sources came forward. More children's names emerged. More parents who had buried their pain and never been heard. Detective Miles Renner was arrested 10 days later at his office, charged with conspiracy, evidence tampering, obstruction of justice, and aiding in the trafficking of minors. At least 14 additional arrests followed in the months after. Camp Willow Creek was permanently shut down. The properties seized. The children on the list, some found alive, others, heartbreakingly, not. 6 months later, Emily received a letter with no return address. Inside, a simple piece of notebook paper, torn and slightly stained. Written in crayon. "Dear Emily, I saw you on TV. I remember the bracelet. I don't know where I am, but I'm okay. I hope you don't stop. Love, Lily." Tears spilled down Emily's face. She clutched the letter like it was her heartbeat. Emily now leads a national advocacy network for the families of missing children. She carries Lily's rabbit with her everywhere. And she still wears the bracelet. It's faded now, fraying at the edges. But it's still whole. Just like the bond between 2 sisters who were never truly separated. Evil doesn't always hide in shadows. Sometimes it wears a badge, or a title, or a smile. But truth, when it's pursued with love, can survive anything. Because love remembers, even when the world forgets. Even when 20 years pass without a word, it remembers. And when it does, it fights, and it finds, and it brings the lost ones home.